And good morning, everybody. Welcome to FSU Coach Live. My name is Tim Baggers, joined with a special guest this morning, Drew Watson from Southeastern University. He's the Director of Athletics. Drew, thanks for joining me. If you wouldn't mind, just tell us a little bit of how you got to where you are today.
Thanks for having me, Tim. I love what you're doing here and just trying to expose different folks in the sports world to your students and those watching. It's a really important thing that you're doing. So I appreciate you having me on.
My pleasure.
How did I get into what I do? It's a good question because when I was in college, when you're 18, 19 years old, people tell you, well, this is what you'd be good at. And you don't always know, yourself, what you really want, what your passion is at that age. So everybody told me I should be a secondary ed history teacher. And so okay, well, I like history. I like kids, and maybe that's where I want to go. So I got into it. By the end of my sophomore year, I just felt like that really wasn't my calling. And so I was a student athlete in college, baseball, basketball, and really got involved a lot at the line and fields, helping out with the coach and the athletic director. And so I graduated with a bachelor's in church ministries. I was at a Christian college at that point. And really, after graduation, I really felt a calling and a passion for athletics. And so at the time, I was an assistant men's basketball coach at my alma mater and just started doing more things with the athletic department. Ended up, coaching. I coached women's basketball 12 years there as a head coach. And the whole time I coached, I was in athletic administration. And so in 2011, my university decided to go a different direction with my position, and I end up here at Southeastern. And I'll never forget, Tim, in the interview, I was in a room with the current coaches and athletic administration. They said, "Hey, would you ever want to be an athletic director again?" And I just said, "No, I will never do that again. That's too much of this and that. I just want to win championships." Well, 12 months later, I was the interim AD at Southeastern because the current AD had moved on. And because of my experience, they just put me in the position. And 2 years later, I resigned from basketball to do this full time. So, God's got a sense of humor, that's for sure. But I love what I do, and I love our students and staff and administration at Southeastern. God could not have landed me in a better place than I am right here.
So if you're just joining us, if you have questions during this interview, feel free to put them in your chat box and we'll get them to Drew. But you've transitioned from the coaching into athletic administration, which is what a lot of ADs do. What are some of the differences between being that coach responsible for a small program and all of a sudden you're responsible for many programs? I counted on your website. I'm going to get it wrong, but 19 teams?
18 teams. Yep. I think it's similar because I'm still coaching, right? I'm coaching my coaches. I'm coaching the coaching staff. And we're pretty ambitious here and trying to get things done and do them right and win and not cut corners. I think that the biggest difference between coaching a college team is I'm not getting back at 4 and 5 in the morning from a road trip. I'm not having to do practice planning. I'm not having to do game planning, watching video and everything a head coach has to do, getting out on the road recruiting. But it's my team, as I said, is now the head coaches. So whenever you're managing people, I've got 14 head coaches that all have different personalities. I've got to prepare for meetings. I've got to prepare and do reports. I've got to, it's a grind. It's just a different sort of grind. And I do miss coaching. I miss the direct interaction with student athletes. I always felt my favorite part of this job, and now I get to watch it from afar, but is watching a student athlete come in as a 17, 18-year-old and watch them change over 4 years and really grow into who they are, figure out who they are. I think, and then watch them walk down the aisle graduation. That is one of the biggest, one of the most exciting moments of anyone in our profession. And as a coach, I got to sit on the front row and watch that process. As the athletic director, I'm a little further back in the crowd, but I still get to see it and still get to hear, the coaches' struggles behind the scenes and watch them overcome. And, it's just, it's similar. It's just different. It's just different in its details, but it's a similar mission.
You're part of the NAIA, and part of that challenge is perhaps finances. You're not a big D1 school where you have all
Right.
the TV rights and the money flowing in, so to speak. How do you balance, as an athletic director, the desire to win on the court or field, which we all have, versus graduating students, having high quality students and developing the reputation of the university?
Well, early on in my time at Southeastern, I kind of laid out a thought that we could be excellent. We could be excellent in three areas: character development, in the classroom, and on the field or on the
Mhm.
court. And Tim, I literally had someone say to me, "You can't do that. There's no way that you can be excellent on the field without compromising one of the other two areas. You either got to be, if you've got to recruit kids who aren't great in the classroom or don't have great character." And if you know anything about me, I'm competitive, and when you tell me I can't do something, I pretty much will double down and really work hard to get it done. And we have been able to do that here. I think it's difficult. It's more difficult because you're fishing from a smaller pond, as it were. You're asking a football coach to do a few extra layers of research and really getting to know the kids he's bringing in. But that's been our focus here. We try and recruit quality people. We try and help them get better at their sport while they're here, and then not any less important and any of the other two is excelling in the classroom. And I've found with this generation, sometimes it's the classroom is a means to an end, and the end is playing sports. But we have coaches who double down on the academic side of things. We have a rigorous study hall program. We have great academic support that gets us real time progress reports on student athlete academic status, as it were. And so what we get to do at the NAI level is, for me, as you mentioned, finances. We have an advancement marketing and advancement associate athletic director who, her job is to put butts in seats and to try and get fans here to see our athletic events, and then to sell those views, as it were, to potential sponsors. And that's Darcy Roberts. She does a phenomenal job for us. But what we like to say is, if you come to a Southeastern athletic event, you will fall in love with our student athletes. You will really get involved in the stories that are behind some of their experiences, the way they compete. Are we perfect? No, you're gonna come to a game and perhaps hear some choice language on occasion, because these are 18, 19, 20-year olds, and you really, our job is to pour into them and find life-changing moments. And anybody you have on here that's involved in athletics has the same. We're not doing anything special here in that regard. Hopefully, anyone who is in the college athletic realm
Mhm.
has focused first the student athletes and really transforming lives. And yeah, we're a Christian university, and that is true in a spiritual sense. We want to make sure lives are transformed as they come to Southeastern and experience what they do here. But it's not just from a spiritual sense. It's growing up. It's growing into adulthood. We have student athletes who have never had a bank account,
Mhm.
never had to manage a checking account, never had to do those things that you or I would maybe look at as we just assume they have. So diving into some of those life skills. But when we've got people wanting to come to our games because they want to support our student athletes, that's when I think we've started. I look at that and go, man, we're starting to do something right, because the community is coming out because they love interacting with our kids. And so, that's not, it's certainly, as you've been in the business, it's not easy. A football team's got 110, 120 kids on it. And those student athletes come from all different walks of life.
Mhm.
And we've got six full-time people diving into 120 kids. And so, I have a tremendous amount of respect for our coaches and the work they do, but it's really about those three areas, Tim. It's, and once once you focus on one at the expense of the other two, we've really lost our way. So it's something that we really inspect quite often here.
Now, you obviously hire coaches, not necessarily hopefully not on a regular basis, because they're successful, both on and off the competitive environment, so to speak. Looking at what you look for in a coach, somebody who may be interested in coaching and saying, hey, I want to be a coach, they're going to come to somebody like you for an interview. What are the things that you're looking for in them, in how they carry themselves, the answers they give, that tell you this is the guy, this is the girl, the lady we want? What would you tell them?
I'd say, first of all, any athletic director is looking for chemistry. I've sat and interviewed many coaches over the years. I've been doing this a long time, and it's remarkable. Sometimes somebody walks in the door with a great resume and has had tremendous success, but when I sit across the room from them, there's something just off, not about them, but about their fit with what we're doing here. And so, chemistry is not really something I think is something I pay attention to. And I would hope the coaches that interview here are paying attention to, do I click with this AD? Do I click with the mission of the university and the athletic department? But following close behind that, Tim, I am very keen on work ethic. I'm very keen on preparation. And when I sit across the room from a coach, or I'm on a call with a coach that's looking to work here, I'm really looking for some evidence that they work, and there's no cutting corners, that there's a high level of integrity in the job that they do with recruiting and coaching, and I think when you've got that kind of when you've got a chemistry fit, and then you've got a hard worker with integrity, I think that goes a long way. And the other thing I would say is preparation. I mentioned preparation and work ethic, but that even shows in an interview. I've interviewed folks who come in. I'll use our new women's soccer coach, Alan Barrios, for an example. When I interviewed him, he's the first coach I've ever hired that did not have a campus visit because of this whole COVID-19 thing. Right. So we did a couple Zoom calls and got after it that way. But during that interview process, he pointed out, Kaiser University's kind of been your Achilles heel. Last year you lost to them 2-1 3 times. I've noticed on their roster, they've got a lot of Scandinavian players that really make up a core of their strength. And when you hear a potential coach talking like that, they're a preparer. They do their homework, and that typically isn't just a standalone deal. It means that's how they prepare their team. That's how they prepare when they recruit. They dive in and they do their homework. So, and I've also been on the other side where a potential employee has said, no, so tell me a little bit about your conference. I don't want to talk about our conference. I think somebody should have done that homework coming into the interview. And so, that's a practical tip for interviewees out there. Really do your homework about, impress the interviewer with your knowledge of the organization, and in an athletic sense, with your knowledge of the team and the history and some of the problems they might have had, or some of the successes that they've had. I think that's impressive when an interviewee comes into a situation, an interview situation, with that kind of preparation level.
We're talking with Drew Watson. He's the director of athletics at Southeastern University. If you have questions for him, now's your chance. Just put them in your chat box and we'll get them to him. Hiring somebody can be a lot of fun, exciting, new transition opportunities. But I suspect that the flip side of that, of having to let coaches go who maybe aren't living up to the expectations you originally had for them, is not a fun experience, and one of the difficult things of being an athletic director.
Yeah, I think one of the things that makes that even more difficult at a place like Southeastern, Tim, is that if you've looked at us at all on social media, we're very proud of the Fire family, and we do things together, as the coaches, the staff, the families are involved. When we're not in a COVID-19 situation, we're having end of the year get-togethers, and we have a coaches retreat where we in July bring all the coaches, all the full-time employees together with their families and do a retreat over the weekend. And so when you look at a situation as you laid out that you've got to let someone go, it becomes a little bit even more difficult in this kind of environment because we do know each other well, and we try and invest in relationships here. And so I think when that happens, I'm a man of faith, and a lot of prayer goes into it. And I think whenever someone's let go, the rest of the folks get nervous. Like what's next for me? I mean, if this guy can get, this lady can let, this coach can get let go, then what's going on? But what I like to lay out, is that there's a lot of moments that get you to that moment. I mean, you don't just kind of you wake up one day and say, I think I'll let so and so go today. That's not how any manager of people who has any clue of what he's doing operates. Right. And it certainly is not the way you operate in a university setting. I'm not the king. I mean, we have an excellent president, Dr. Ken Engel. Our Dr. Chris Owen is who I report to, our executive vice president. Our leadership team. I mean, I report to folks. I can't just wake up on a whim one day and let somebody go. But there's a process that goes along with that. I think what I laid out earlier, and we're stressing excellence on the field, excellence in the classroom, and excellence in our development of character. And so when one of those areas isn't being met up, the expectations aren't being met, then there's a process. We talk, and I think one of my focuses as a leader is to make sure I'm having difficult conversations and being very transparent with folks. I don't beat around the bush or tiptoe around. If there's an issue, we dive in, and we're pretty direct with it. And so I feel confident in saying, unless there was an ethical or moral issue that we became aware of at some point, there's nobody who is surprised when that happens. It's typically we get to the point where it's, hey, we've talked about this. This is still an issue, and we're going to have to change direction here. But you're right; it is not a decision that's ever entered into lightly. And I can say this, and this. I mean, if you're a person, this. There's certain people you're closer with, certain other people you just don't click with. No matter where someone is on that spectrum, I've never walked into a situation like that, excited to get it done. I mean, that is a very, and typically my prayer the night before I go to bed the night before is, if this is not the right decision, help me to wake up with a lack of peace about this. And and so that's very difficult. But I think as a manager of people, if you're having conversations that are honest, even if they're difficult along the way, then you're really being fair to your employees and your coaches, and that they know where they stand with you at any given day. And I think as an athletic director, I owe that to the staff. I owe that to our head coaches. They work very hard doing the things that they do, recruiting and diving into any amount of situations with these kids that are very difficult. And so for me to be less than transparent about where they're at, or if I have a concern with them, is really unfair. And it would be derelict in my duty if I wasn't upfront with them.
That's obviously a difficult thing you have to do, and it's something that you mentioned wasn't a one-off, a spur of the moment thing. It was right. Systematic. And so, how do you evaluate coaches? Do you have some kind of system, end of the year process that allows them to see where they're at, where they can improve, what they're doing well?
Yeah, typically I as the director of athletics, and I don't know a colleague of mine who kind of sits in the office for 8 or 9 hours and never gets out and talks to folks or watches practice or goes to games. So as an AD, we're all doing that. We're all, we're getting out there, and I'm watching practice. I have biweekly meetings with my in-season coaches, and then my out-of-season coaches, we meet once a month. But in between those meetings, they're free to come in with whatever concerns or questions they have. They can call or text me at any time, 24/7. But as I engage in that daily process of conversations, of watching practice, of watching games, breaking down, I'm not an AD who's going to ask the football coach why we ran that play on 3rd and 10. That's not my job. Yeah. But on occasion we'll jump into, hey, I've noticed this pattern over the course of, if it's a football coach, hey, we're 5 games in, I've noticed this. Can you explain that to me? What your philosophy is on that? And it's not X's and O's. It typically is not X's. It's more philosophical, past the X's and O's. But because I'm out there, because I'm having conversations, I generally get a sense, within my own spirit, how things are going. And then we do a postseason evaluation where we send to student athletes, and it's really 22 questions they answer on their coach, and then they answer questions on their athletic department experience, and then on the athletic training experience. And so within those 22 questions, they range the gamut. They're X's and O's questions, tactical. How did my coach prepare me for the event? Mentally, physically, tactically. But we get into questions, because we're a Christian institution. Do I see that my coach has an active relationship with Christ? That's something that we ask. Do I feel like am I more important as a person than winning? And they get to rate that 1 to 5, 1 being poor, 5 being excellent. And typically, Tim, I don't remember a time when I've walked into an evaluation situation and looked and opened up those surveys where I was blown away by what I found, because typically the student athletes confirm what I'm thinking already, whether it's a positive sense or a negative sense. I have coaches I'm thinking of right now who I think are operating at a high level. And when I look at their student athlete survey, it confirms that. And sure, you always have outliers. You have the kids that felt like they should start and play 40 minutes a game in basketball, and they were a bench player, and they're going to rip their coach on the way out the door. But there's a couple questions on the survey that I asked to kind of start to. It's right at the front end of the survey, and it's basically, what rate your importance to the team from your perspective 1 to 10, and then from your coach's perspective 1 to 10. And typically, if I see a student athlete who says my importance to the team was an 8, but my coaches felt that I was a 2, I know what's coming. And typically it's a very negative, throw the coach under the bus situation. And typically they're outliers. But if you've got a whole team that feels that way, I've pretty much already gathered that by my interactions and kind of taking the temperature of the team as you go through the season. But I'm not a guy who, I'm a guy who will speak with student athletes, talk them up. How you doing? How's school going? Get to know them a little bit. But I'm not asking questions during hey, how do you like your coach? What's going? That's not a fair question, and that's not something that I like to get into. But I think the evaluation process starts from day one, and then what happens is my coaches and I sit down postseason, and we go over some of the points. So what I'll do is I'll go over the top 3 points on your highest rated categories on the student athlete survey, and then your 3 lowest rated categories, and just provide an opportunity for improvement. And then we'll talk about, depending on how serious I think the issue is, we'll talk about, how we address that, how I can help them address that, and keep them accountable to those things.
Some people, and I've had this in my office, will come in, Dr. Baghurst, I want to be an athletic director one day. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about what that means and some of the challenges you're going to face. And I think this is an opportunity for you maybe to kind of make them aware of the realities, so that I can say, what, if you want to be an athletic director one day, why don't you go watch this video and really understand what it is. Can you talk a little bit about your roles and responsibilities and some of the challenges you face in those?
I think with any position, and I'll just start with this. I think with any position, you need to make sure that you have done a good job of networking within that profession. And athletic director, the role of athletic director, if you're not one, I think it's not easy to hang with athletic directors. Not that we're standoffish or we're hard to get along with. It's just that I think it's easier to get in and work with a coach than it is an AD. And so I think I would say this in any profession, but there are opportunities within our profession. And I'll just talk coaching for just a second. Typically the coaches that I hire, I've heard about them from somewhere, whether it's one of my current coaches, whether it's in my past somewhere I've worked with them, and I've continued to watch them and see their career develop. But you and if you've been at the Final Four, particularly the men's Final Four, at some of the team hotels, you'll find aspiring coaches in the lobby with a stack of their resumes, giving it out to Coach K as he walks by, and these coaches as they come by. Personally, I mean, that I'm sure that's worked for a lot of people, but personally, I'm
I
not
don't know that
hiring.
it has worked for a lot of people.
Well, you're probably right, but I'm not hiring off a resume. I mean, I'm resume is a good start, but I'm hiring because, as I mentioned before, there's some chemistry there. I know I'm getting someone with integrity and a great work ethic. So for those up and coming folks that want to get into athletic administration or coaching, you've got to get to the camps and clinics. You've got to get in there, then dive in. People who are focused on what are you paying me this summer? I get that there's bills to pay, but some of the best positions that set you up for success are ones that you dive into and you go, no, I'm going to work my tail off, and I don't care what you pay me, I'll volunteer. But at the end of that experience, when you've got camp directors and coaches that these people have worked with, who are going, man, I would work with that person in a heartbeat. And when I run my own camp, I'm gonna give him or her a call, and I'm gonna get him at my camp, because that kid was invaluable. When you've got that kind of perspective, and you dive in and you make yourself invaluable, you show yourself to have integrity. You show yourself to work hard. You show yourself to stay after if you need to. You show yourself to invest in people. Those are the kind of people that are talked about by camp directors and whatnot. So, but as far as my job goes, and I would say, and the reason I started with coaches, I think in order to identify with coaches, you have to have coached. Now, are there plenty of ADs who haven't coached? Sure, absolutely. And I'm sure they do a great job. In fact, I know some who do a great job. However, I can't tell you how many times I've gotten into a situation where I'm so thankful that I coached, because a coach is coming in here with frustrations, and I can go, I hear you. I
Yeah.
had that same frustration. I get where you're coming from. And I think because I've coached, I'm able to take some pressure off of our coaches, because there's things that I put in place that we don't even talk about. I just think they're common sense. And so, I think it's important to have coached. I think it's important to be direct with folks. But as far as my daily responsibilities, I mean, it's really making sure that I'm checking in with coaches. And I field any amount of calls, Tim, on, I've got this situation with this girl on my team or this guy on my team. And I can't tell you how many, I get a text saying, hey, I got a doozy. Do you have a few minutes? And typically when I get that text, I know it's probably an hour and a half that I'm committing to at that point, because when it's a doozy, it's pretty much something we've got to really unpack and dive deep into, and then figure out how we're going to address it. And as I mentioned before, 18, 19, 20-year-olds, I was there once, and I was a mess. And that's really our job. Our job is to dive into the mess and to affect change, and really show through some of those growth opportunities what the proper thing to do and what the proper path is. But budgeting, scholarship, personnel, making sure that our coaches have what they need as much as I can give them. There's government reports. There's the AADA report, NAIA end of year reports. There's any number of reports I've got to do in house here for student life or the executive vice president. There's and then there's just the stuff that you don't really notice until you notice it. Those little things that my administrative assistant does, or our assistant and associate ADs do, or our athletic communications folks do, and it's my job to provide a vision, and then to inspect if people are operating and implementing the vision. And that vision comes from our president on down. It's not something that is unique to athletics. We don't come up with our own vision that's apart from the university. But my job really is we've got a task, we've got a vision, and I'm the gatekeeper in athletics to make sure that the folks that are working here, are getting that done. And so that's a very 35,000-foot view, Tim, but
Mhm.
it varies by the day, which actually makes my job fun. Whether it's diving into a tough situation with a coach, or it's being out watching practice, or going, traveling to, Macon, Georgia for a first round NAIA baseball matchup. It's different by the day, which is really fun for me. But it's never dull. It's never boring.
We did have a question come in for you from Steve Herbert, who says, as a student working to become a coach, is there a specific organization you would start with? And I'm assuming here that this is general sports as opposed to the organization associated with that sport.
Well, no, I think every sport has their own organization, their own
Mhm.
coaches association. So whether it's at the college level, I think the NABC, the National Association of Basketball Coaches. You've got the Soccer Coaches Association. You've got any a number of those that are specific to the coaches in that sport. They will then they then have camps, clinics. They've got things that people are interested in getting involved in the organization can attend. But then, if you're looking at the high school level, there are camps and clinics all over the place. And I think, I would advise that you get connected with someone who knows the in and outs of whatever sport or organization you're getting into. So at the high school level, you may look around your county and go, all right, I'm looking to get into football. The three most successful football programs in my county? And so I may start with the head coach at the top one on my list. And maybe he doesn't have the time to give. Maybe he doesn't return your call or return your email, and you can't get an audience with him. Try an assistant coach, or try the head coach at the number 2 on your list. But that's the kind of thing where you get a door shut in your face. You don't quit.
Hmm.
You try. And so it's not necessarily an organization, although they do help. But it's identifying people who, and you would understand this, Tim, and I think the professionals watching this would. You get to the point, hopefully we're always learning in our journey. So we're always learning that, we're trying to expand our horizons. But there's a point at which in your career you get to where you turn around and you go, all right, I've been running this way, and I've been looking to all these mentors to try and pour into me, which you still have, but then you turn around and you go, who's coming behind?
Yeah.
And so who can I pour into behind me? So I'm not so focused on me and running my direction and my mentor. Well, who am I mentoring? And so I would say that question, there are people out there in the coaching world, whether it's high school or college, assistant, graduate assistant, those GA positions are very valuable in that regard. But, there's people out there who are very focused on helping folks that are coming behind. And so, if you set out that list of the top 3 programs in your sport, your county, um, you're going to find, if you list out the coaches in each program. So you got 3 programs, you got the coaches listed out. You may have 25% of those folks who are willing to turn around and really invest. But if you can find 1,
Mhm.
you can find 2, then that's a really good start as far as you get your foot in the door to getting some opportunities. Because if those folks are really interested in growing and mentoring people, they're going to say, hey, why don't you come to practice tomorrow? Why don't you, and then maybe that turns into helping out at practice. That turns into coaching a position. That turns into, any number of things. And then you can pitch yourself as a GA to someone like Southeastern and to our head coach, Coach Rivas, and say, hey, I worked with Lakeland High School the last 4 years with our offensive line. Do you need any help? I'd love to get a kinesiology degree and a master's degree. So it's really, and I think too many people get the door shut. So they'll reach out to a coach, don't get a response, reach out to another coach, don't get a response, don't take no for an answer. It's not that you harass and stalk those folks out. You move on to the next folks, the next people, the next person on your list. So, it's persistence, but then the emotional intelligence to know, hey, the persistence with this person isn't paying off. Let me try and go a different direction with another person. But it's really people who are willing to turn around and show the way to folks that are coming and want to come behind and really excel and exceed in that profession that really help you move forward.
My last question, although I think we just got one in. As a high school coach, this is Sarah, as a high school coach of 5+ years looking to get into college coaching, what do you look for from an AD perspective in hiring a new college coach? You talked a little bit about, the fit and just whether you have a relationship with them during the interview. What else are you looking for?
Well, I think, and Sarah Poole actually played for me at what was Philadelphia Biblical University. It's now Cairn University. And so hello, Sarah. Thanks for tuning in. It's been a while. But Sarah was a great point guard, very gritty point guard. I coached her sister as well. But I would say this. I think there's a lot of frustration at people at Sarah's level. You've coached, you've really done well, and you think that you can step up and perhaps coach at the next level. I think it's what am I looking for? I think it really depends on the program. There's certain programs that we may have an opening for that, if you've got some solid high school experience and have done well, I would say that's if I'm going to hire a high school coach, it's got to be someone who has excelled at high school, has won some state championships, or at least gotten into the finals at the higher levels of the state. And it goes back to what I said, Tim, with with how, what I look for when I hire: integrity, work ethic, chemistry. I think if you're that kind of coach, people are going to start talking about you and really promoting what you do. But it goes back to what I was saying earlier with getting involved in camps and clinics. So finding someone at the college level who's going to kind of adopt you as a high school coach, who's going to have you at camps and clinics and get you face to face with college coaches. I think that's the best way, in my opinion, that it happens, where you're in that setting. So I've worked women's basketball and boys basketball camps throughout FCA and otherwise throughout the years, and in those coaching staffs are invariably our college head coaches, college assistant coaches, and there's high school coaches. But I don't think a high school coach can. They're not going. It's going to be very difficult to get that first college job, a job that you would want, if you're not doing the work to get to camps and clinics and rubbing elbows with college coaches. As I said before, your name's got to pop into someone's head when they have a job opening. And it's not going to if you haven't had yourself talked about by people who you've worked with. And so, for coaches like Sarah, who have been at this 5 years, excel at that level, and then make sure you are getting out on a consistent basis and really building quality relationships with college coaches in your sport. And when that happens, I think if you've got the respect of those folks, they're going to hear of openings and go, man, Sarah's been looking. Let me put a bug in that AD's ear, and this is someone that he or she may want to look at. And quite often, sometimes it's having the humility to be willing to take an assistant coach position or director of operations position, because that's gonna build that. In the old days, Tim, it was a Rolodex, right?
Right.
It's going to build that arsenal of contacts, if you will, and when you start building that, it exponentially, you start to understand a whole different amount of you can call any number of folks and, hey, I just had a tough loss, really struggling with post defense. Hey, I know that coach from the FCA camp at Kutztown I worked with 5 years ago. Let me give her a call. But it's really being diligent at fostering those relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And I think more than that, Tim, it's making sure that when you're fostering those relationships, it's truly investing in the relationship. You're not just getting to know someone to use them as a stepping stone. You're getting to know people who you really enjoy being with and talking to and relating with. And then, because any of us, we can see a relationship being built 2 miles away. That's just kind of an opportunistic deal. But when those relationships where you meet a coach at a camp and you know each other 30, 35 years later, And that, I mean, those things are gold. And I think the more, because those relations, you don't have a ton of those relationships, but the ones that are quality and that are deep, they actually work for your advantage because they have deep relationships with folks and they have deep, so it's really building a network.
Yeah, and I might add as well, one of the interesting things you talked about was going back to being an assistant to go back up, and sometimes even taking a pay cut in order
Right.
to really go for what you were doing. And we had Jay Hernandez on, who's the assistant coach at Charlotte Hornets, and he talked about actually taking a pay cut to go from private into the NBA.
Yeah.
Which was like, wow, really? You took a pay
Yeah.
cut to go to the NBA? Yeah, because that's what I wanted to do.
Yep.
And I've done the same thing where I took a pay cut in order to kind of pursue what I really wanted to do. And so I think that's important. And I also think as well, we have a unique opportunity in social media to connect with people that we would never otherwise be able to connect. If we, as you talked about the Rolodex, we don't have that anymore because we have a unique ability to access people such as yourself. I mean, I wouldn't be interviewing you if I wasn't able to reach out to Chris Hobbs. Hey, you should talk to this guy. He'd be great.
Right.
And so we have those connections that we can make that otherwise wouldn't be able to do. And that really provides us an opportunity, but we got to get out there. As you said, it can't just be, hopefully people come to me and hear that I'm doing a great job.
Well, and I would say this too, when you talk about passion, having a passion for so having a passion for coaching, having a passion for people. How many student athletes have we run into who said, "Man, I love basketball. I want to excel." One of the things one of the priorities I had on my coaching, one of my coaching handouts that I would give to the girls when I coach was, I'm looking for people who don't just say they want to win, but are willing to put in the work that it takes to win.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people want to win. A lot of people have a passion. They say they have a passion for coaching or they have a passion for people. But what is that passion motivating you to do? Is it just lip service? Like, hey, I got a passion for coaching. Oh, really? Because you never go to clinics, you never watch videos, you never reach out to folks.
Yeah.
You're not meeting with your players to help them get better. What is that? That's not a passion for coaching. So I think, and you and I both know, Tim, passion is contagious. Passion is unmistakable. If you've got a passion for coaching basketball, you go to a camp. When you leave that camp, the other coaches at camp go, "Wow, man." And I'll use Sarah because she has to go. Sarah's got a tremendous passion. I can't wait to I might have her come in and speak to my team because so that passion and so I would ask this, what is your passion motivating you to do? Is it you just talking about it, or is your passion motivating you to make a list of the 3 top programs in your county and then contact those people? Don't take no for an answer. Show, or is your passion, well, I love coaching basketball. Really? Well, what evidence is there for that? Passion is contagious. So I'd say if you, and some people quite frankly, I mean, some people may get into an AD's chair and go, "Man, I thought this would be my passion, but this stinks." I don't like this, and it happens in any number of I wanted to be an accountant in high school. They did a week-long in-service where at the end of our senior year, we went to work as a volunteer for a week in the profession that we wanted. I did that it didn't even take a week, Tim. It was 2 days. I am not cut out to be an accountant. But I think making sure you find your passion, you identify it, and then you run. You run towards it. You do whatever you can to just motivate yourself to operate in your passion and to let that passion be contagious to those around you. Because it's unmistakable. I mean, you've run into folks who have a passion for what they do, and it's like, wow, that's pretty cool. Whether it doesn't matter what you do. You could be collecting trash. You could be the president of the United States. You could be anywhere in between. If you've got a passion for what you're doing, and I love seeing those people, because whether you go into McDonald's or you're going into some business in town, you can tell the people that enjoy what they're doing, the people that don't. And so, I'm getting off on a rabbit trail here, Tim, because it's something that's important to me. I mean, I think passion is incredibly important.
Yeah, we had a coach on, Jason Smelzer, who's a strength and conditioning coach and a football coach, and he said if you're not passionate about what you're doing in coaching, then get out, because it will eat you up, and you'll learn to hate it. And,
it's true.
But I would add as well that the passion has to come with the work ethic as well, right?
Yep.
We can be passionate about something, but we have to be passionate enough that we're willing to put in the time and effort. And I see a lot of maybe prospective coaches who want to be the next Nick Saban, but aren't willing, as you said, to go to the clinics or read the books or meet with people and really do the grind that's required in order to be successful.
And it's interesting you point that out, Tim, because I think one of the things that I've noticed about young folks these days is that there's an errant perspective out there that says that my journey from here to where I want to go is linear.
Yeah.
There's going to be no bumps. There's going to be no problems. It's not going to have highs and lows on it. It's just going to kind of, it's just going to kind of be a smooth ride. Well, it's not the way it is. And so, you've got to understand if you've got a passion for something, life's going to try and knock it out of you. And in those moments, you got to kind of do some soul searching and hopefully you come up from that low point and go, no, that's not going to knock me off the track. It's just going to teach me something that's really important for what I'm going to do later. And I've got to note that. I can't forget that, and so if there's anything, I would encourage younger folks out there pursuing a career, understand that just like anything in life, relationships, it is not always smooth sailing, but don't give up. If you feel you've got a passion for it, you've got a gift for it, don't let the distractions and the low points knock you off that trail. It's worth it to continue on.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to provide some perspective and advice. If somebody wants to reach out to you, maybe as a potential mentor, have questions for you about your roles and responsibilities, what's the best way for them to do that?
Just reach out to my email, dwatson@seu.edu. And that's my email here at the university, and would love to hear from folks.
Well, Drew, thank you for your time. I do appreciate it, and willing to give your advice to everybody watching and everybody watching in future. I really do want to say thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks so much for the opportunity, Tim. It's been great.
My pleasure. Just a reminder, coming up tomorrow, Micah Kurtz, he's the Director of Sports Performance and the Assistant AD at Windermere Prep, will be talking to us about what he does, how he juggles his roles, some of the challenges he faces in his environment. So I hope you join us for that. And then also this week, we have a full lineup. Michael Holzer at Iona College, not University, my apologies for that, will be joining us on Wednesday. Thursday, Jason Hawkins, he's the General Manager of OKC Energy FC, will be joining us. Be interesting to talk about the kind of global perspective of being a general manager of a pro team. And then also Kyle Stevenson, he's the head coach of track and field at Georgia State University. We'll be talking about his experiences coaching in that discipline as well. So on behalf of myself and, of course, Drew Watson, thank you so much for watching.
Thanks, Tim.